Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take all those sources you send us, articles, videos, specs, the lot, and really try to pull out the key insights, the surprising stuff.
Yeah, basically giving you the shortcut. We
Yeah.
sift through it all, find what really matters, and help you understand not just the what, but the why.
And today we're diving into something pretty specific and I think pretty cool in music production. It's about getting that authentic sound of 1960s Detroit soul and Memphis R&B rhythm guitar.
hmm
We're looking at a Kontakt library called the Commodore from Authentic Soundware. And, well, the main reason we're hitting this right now, there's a really, really good deal on it.
Right. So our mission today is to unpack what makes the Commodore tick, how it captures that very specific sound, what it actually lets you do as a producer, and yeah, definitely spill the beans on that limited time offer. That's kind of the hook here.
Okay, so we've got info straight from Authentic Soundware site. We've watched their YouTube videos. They've got an overview and a really in-depth walkthrough. And crucially, we grabbed all the deal details from Audio Plugin Deals.
So if you're chasing that vintage vibe, that specific guitar tone, or maybe you're just curious how these sounds get captured virtually, well, stick around.
Let's start right at the core. The sound itself. The Commodore isn't like a general guitar library. It's laser focused on that unmistakable rhythm guitar sound from the golden era of soul and R&B. Think Motown, think Stax.
And the way they got there starts with the instrument, obviously.
Right.
A vintage Fender Telecaster. But here's the interesting part, the detail that shouts authentic.
Yeah.
They recorded direct input, DI, straight through a restored vintage Altec tube mixer.
Ah, the Altec mixer. Okay, that's a key piece, right?
Yeah.
Especially for the Detroit sound.
Absolutely. That was pretty common practice back then, particularly in Detroit. Going DI through the console, it gives you this really clean signal, but it's also full of character, those tube harmonics.
Right, so it's not like micing an amp. It's that unique, almost gritty, but clean DI tone.
Exactly. It's foundational to so many hits. It sort of bakes the console's sound right into the instrument.
Okay, so it's capturing the whole signal path that made that sound, not just the guitar in isolation. And the sources mentioned, while it's rooted in that Motor City DI sound, it's pretty versatile.
Yeah, you can definitely shape it, keep it clean for modern stuff, pop, R&B, new disco, or, run it through an amp sim if you want to lean more towards that Memphis vibe, maybe like a small Fender amp sound, think Steve Cropper.
Gotcha. A timeless sound, really. And it was put together in NYC by Jared Hunter, who's a composer and arranger.
Which probably explains why there's such a focus on, musicality and workflow, not just dumping a load of samples on you.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that leads right into the core idea behind the Commodore. The aim was to kind of merge two worlds, right? The ease of loops with the control of a full instrument.
Exactly. Get that instant inspiration, that speed you get from loops, but also have the power to build completely custom parts, with all the nuances, like you would with a deep multi-sample library.
Best of both worlds, hopefully.
That's the idea, giving you curated sounds and creative freedom.
So to manage all this, they split it into 5 separate Kontakt instruments, 5 .NENKI files. And looking at these individually really shows you the depth.
Right. You get melodic, chords playable, octaves playable, chord loops, and octave loops. Let's maybe break those down a bit.
Okay, first up, melodic. This is for your single notes, riffs, melodies, fills, that kind of thing. What jumps out is the sheer number of articulations, the performance techniques they capture.
Yeah, it's not just sustained notes. You get palm muting, obviously essential for rhythm stuff.
Yeah.
And they included 2 different types of legato.
2 types. How do they differ?
Well, one's your typical smooth hammer-on pull-off sound, good for lead lines. The other is what they call a finger slide re-attack. It's a very specific sound you hear in R&B and soul phrasing, linking notes with a little slide. Having both is a nice touch.
Definitely. Plus, you get the usual suspects, grace notes, trills, bends, falls, rises, all triggered by key switches. Makes it feel more playable.
Right, trying to get those expressive guitar things right there under your fingers.
Okay, then chords, playable. This is where you build your own rhythm parts, chord by chord. The sources called it near encyclopedic.
And you can see why. Over 4,000 samples, they covered 11 different chord types and inversions chromatically in all keys. That's a lot of sampling.
But the real insight, I think, is how they sampled them, the articulations.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just the chords. It's the way they're played in this style. Different strum directions, down, up, short, medium.
Yeah.
Then you have things like rake and scoop. Those are totally characteristic soul R&B moves.
Yeah, those little flourishes make a huge difference. Muted strums, too, for rhythmic chugging. Even transition noises, unpitched slides. It adds that bit of realism.
It really does. It's about capturing the performance nuances. And you can trigger chords either with key switches, or it has a detect mode where you just play the chord on your keyboard.
How well does that detect mode work?
Hmm.
Sometimes this can be tricky.
They seem to have thought about that. There's an adjustable buffer time, which basically means you can tweak how quickly it recognizes the chord you're playing, making it hopefully easier to play faster or more complex changes without it getting confused.
Smart. And you can mix the levels of the different sounds, like the main strum versus the mutes.
Yep, independent volume controls for each articulation type, so you can really dial in the balance.
Okay, next is octaves. Playable. Similar idea to the chords patch, but just for octaves.
Pretty much. Focus on building those custom high-register octave lines. Simpler, obviously, but still gives you 8 articulations, longs, shorts, up-down strokes, ghost notes, falls, rises. Essential for that funky sound.
Right. So those are the playable instruments. Now for the loops, chord loops has, what, over 800 patterns?
Over 800, yeah. Tempo-syncable rhythm patterns.
Yeah.
This is where you get that speed and immediate vibe.
Accessed through a custom browser and Kontakt, right? And they mentioned something about the recording quality, 96 kilohertz.
Yeah, recording the loops at 96 kilohertz is smart. It helps Kontakt's time stretching, the Time Machine Pro algorithm handle tempo changes more cleanly. Less crunchy artifacts when you speed things up or slow them down.
Ah, okay. Better quality stretching. And these loops cover all keys and different chord types, too.
All 12 keys and 6 common chord types or inversions per key. So pretty flexible. And there's this loop legato mode mentioned.
Loop legato, what's that do?
It's pretty cool, actually. Say you're playing a loop and you trigger a different chord or even a whole different loop pattern.
Yeah.
Instead of the new loop starting from the beginning, it picks up exactly where the previous loop left off in the bar. It keeps the rhythmic momentum going seamlessly while you change the harmony or the groove.
Oh, that's really useful. Avoids those jarring restarts. Nice workflow touch.
Definitely. There's also an option to use constant velocity, which just means you can control the loop volume easily with your mod wheel or expression pedal.
Got it. And finally, octave loops. I guess this mirrors the chord loops, but for octave patterns.
Exactly the same idea. A library of classic octave riffs, quarter notes, turnarounds, more energetic stuff. Again, quick inspiration for that specific sound.
So a really comprehensive package, deep playable instruments, and these flexible loop players.
All driving towards that one authentic sound target.
Okay, let's hit the specs and requirements. This is important stuff. Size-wise, it's about 2.7 gigabeats installed. Comes from 4.8 gigabytes of uncompressed samples. You get those 5 NKI instruments we talked about.
Samples are 24-bit, 48 kilohertz, but remember those loops are at 96 kilohertz for the time stretching.
And here's the big one, the absolute must-know requirement. You need the full version of Native Instruments Kontakt.
Yeah, this is critical, specifically version 6.7 or higher.
It absolutely positively will not work with the free Kontakt player. So if you only have the free player, you'd need to buy the full Kontakt software separately to use this.
That's a common point of confusion with Kontakt libraries, so it's good they make it clear. And you also need the free Pulse Downloader app to actually install it.
Okay, good to know. And what are people saying about it? Any user feedback mentioned?
Yeah, the sources highlighted some positive quotes. Things like, best guitar library I ever heard, very flexible, inspiring library, and someone mentioning it lets them replicate things they previously could only find in pre-made loops.
So it sounds like it's hitting the mark for users looking for that blend of authenticity and usability.
Seems that way. People appreciate getting those specific sounds with that level of control.
Which circles us right back to the start, and the main reason we're doing this dive now, that deal, all this depth, this specific vintage tone.
It's currently on offer over at Audio Plugin Deals. And the price is pretty striking.
It really is. They've got the Commodore listed for just $39.
Yeah, $39. Compare that to its normal price, which is $99.
So that's, what, 60% off?
Exactly. 60% off the regular price.
Yeah.
For a library this focused and detailed, that's a significant value.
It definitely catches your attention. But as always with these kinds of deals, there's a time limit.
Right. According to the info we pulled from Audio Plugin Deals, and remember, this is based on when we checked, there were only 13 days left on this offer.
13 days, so it's not going to be around forever at that price.
No. If this particular sound is something you need or you've been wanting to explore, $39 is a really compelling entry point. But you need to act relatively soon.
So let's connect this back to you, the listener. Why does a tool like the Commodore, especially at this $39 price point, actually matter?
Well, think about it.
Yeah.
If you're a producer, maybe you don't play guitar, or maybe you do, but getting this specific vintage DI tone Nailing that feel,
Yeah.
it's hard.
Yeah, it's a very particular sound and style.
So this library acts like a shortcut. It curates all the essential sounds, the right articulations, the typical techniques for this genre. It cuts through the noise of having, like, a million generic guitar samples.
It gives you a focused toolkit, and those details we talked about, the different legato types, the rakes and scoops on the chords, that loop legato thing.
Right. Those aren't just bullet points on a feature list. They're the aha moments. They're tools that actually help you make the music sound more real, more authentic, and they open up creative options that are, frankly, a pain to try and program manually.
Especially when you can get access to all that for, the price of a couple of pizzas right now.
Exactly. It's about making a piece of musical history, that specific performance feel accessible and usable in your tracks
Yeah.
efficiently. The deal just makes that access much easier.
Okay, so let's wrap up this deep dive. The Commodore by Authentic Soundware. It's a really unique Kontakt library. Meticulously captures that 1960s Detroit soul, Memphis R&B rhythm guitar sound, vintage vintage Altec mixer DI.
And it cleverly balances deep, playable instruments with really useful flexible loop features across those 5 NKIs. You get control and inspiration.
And the headline news, right now for a very limited time, just 13 days left according to our sources. You can grab it at audio plug-in deals for only $39. That's 60% off the usual $99.
Huge value. Just remember, you absolutely must have the full version of Kontakt 6.7 or higher. The free player won't cut it.
So here's something to think about. How does having instant access to such a specific, deeply sampled historical sound, that unmistakable Motor City DI tone, over 4,000 chord samples with all those performance details, how does that actually change your creative process?
Yeah, does having a tool that basically hands you a curated slice of musical history free you up creatively compared to, say, battling with generic sounds or trying to build that authenticity from the ground up? It's an interesting question about how these specialized tools shape not just our workflow, but maybe even the music we end up making.